who wants to go through life like that? Like, I don't. Hi guys, it's Amanda with Eat, Pray, Crunch, and today I'm going to be talking about something a little more personal yet again. I feel like I've been doing a lot of these kind of Debbie Downer kind of videos in the last month, and I apologize for that. It's just kind of how life has played out this last month for me. But I mentioned in my weight loss journey update that I had been having some pretty severe anxiety, and I feel like I kind of owe an explanation for that. And this is something that I have been wanting to talk about on YouTube for quite a while. But haven't really had like reason to do so up to this point. But you know, with the events of this last month, I feel like it's really given me reason to talk about it because it's been like so much more relevant to me this last month especially. So I have watched some of my fellow YouTubers talk about this kind of thing. There have even been some pretty big YouTubers who have talked about this kind of thing in serious personal videos about their own journeys within the last year that have been really inspiring to me. People just talking about the things that they are struggling with and being really honest about that on YouTube, and I really appreciate that and I really value that because I feel like, you know, I actually made a whole video about this, I'll link it here, about how it's easy to feel totally inadequate with social media when everybody's putting like the absolute best part of their life out on social media, and you know, YouTube as well is no different. I think people see a lot of people's lives on YouTube, and you know, especially like family vloggers, that kind of thing, and think, wow, I feel really inadequate. I'm not very good at doing this or that, and man, they don't seem to struggle with anything. And quite frankly, I think that's just dishonest because everybody struggles with something. And you know, there are different seasons that people struggle with things in life. You know, sometimes people are going through a really good season in their life and sometimes they're not, and when they're not, I feel like it's just not shared very much. And I feel like that's actually harmful when we're not open about that, because here you are like comparing your life to what you see on YouTube and social media and thinking that, you know, nobody is having the kind of struggles that you're having. But if you guys have been watching my channel for any length of time, you know that I am about really being open and honest and real. And, you know, I think that it's just not only more relatable, but it just makes people feel less alone when you're being honest about like the good stuff and the bad stuff, because there is both in life, right? Just a reminder that life really does have its ups and downs, and none of us are ever alone in that struggle. So that's just a long tangent. All that is to say, I have been really inspired by the YouTubers who have really opened up about their various struggles. I just felt like that's kind of like a movement that I am willing to contribute to. So I'm not really sure where to start. I guess I could just start with, I think that I have struggled with anxiety all of my life, and it has only become like really apparent to me within the last month, with circumstances really making it bad, that it is something that I have always struggled with. When I reflect back even into my childhood, it definitely was not like by any means debilitating when I was a child. I mean, there were certain circumstances when it did feel that way, but I do remember getting anxious stomach aches a lot when I was a kid. And just when I was feeling nervous about something or anxious about something at school or with friends or whatever the problems of young kids are, I remember I used to get stomach aches, and I'm certain now that that was a symptom of anxiety as a kid. And I remember that my mom used to, you know, when I said I had a tummy ache, she would actually like physically rub my belly and it would make it feel better. So it wasn't like there was like physically something going on with my stomach, but it was, you know, my emotional state affecting my stomach, and just that act of care would make me feel better. And through my adolescence and into college and that kind of thing, that's always how I have experienced anxieties in my stomach. Is I feel very queasy, very nauseated, and it's definitely something that, you know, usually just comes up with circumstances that are anxiety producing. I was a very shy child. I mean, it would take me a while to warm up to people, and once I did, I would really warm up, but I definitely had social anxiety. And, you know, I think that's just common among introverts. It takes a lot of energy for us introverts to be in social contexts, especially with people that you don't know very well. It's draining a lot of the time, and I would just get a lot of social anxiety and feel that nervousness and that queasiness in unfamiliar social contexts. Now, you know, being an introvert, it's usually true of introverts that there are a core group of people who you are really comfortable with. And that was definitely true when I was a kid. I had my group of friends, and we'd always hang out, and I was totally open with them. We'd go crazy and get hyper as kids and everything. I was just my total normal self around them. But there were contexts when I felt that way. It's interesting now thinking about how change has always been difficult for me. And I say it's interesting because change is something that my son really struggles with as well. He has a hard time with change, and I take credit for that. I have a hard time with change too. Any of you guys have a hard time with change? Because I certainly do. Just changing life circumstances, that always brings up a lot of anxiety for me. Usually lose my appetite during big life transitions, but I feel like that's normal anxiety. So all through my youth, like, I feel like it wasn't rising to the level of affecting my functioning. It was just, you know, I was prone to anxiety, and it would come up in frequent circumstances, but it wasn't to the point where it would limit me from doing anything. And then when I went to college, that transition in and of itself was like probably one of the biggest changes in my life. Then moving 5 hours away from home and being completely on my own, where I didn't know anybody at all whatsoever, living in a dorm, in this communal living situation. It was just, you know, all of those things that you experience in college for the first time that are huge changes. And I remember, like, the entire first week of college, I was always on the verge of feeling like I was gonna throw up because I was so anxious about the change. But then I adapted, and like, that first year of college was a blast. I loved it. And you know, the second year was pretty fun too. And then my junior year and my senior year, and the year after, this anxiety started getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where, like, during my senior year and the year after, it was definitely debilitating to me. Like, there was times when I would miss class. Like, I was getting to the point where I was physically getting sick. Like, I would actually throw up, like, you know, every few weeks from the anxiety. Now, there were a lot of factors included in that. Mainly, you know, I was in a bad relationship at the time, and I was not sure what I wanted to do with my life. I actually almost became an elementary school teacher. I may have mentioned that in previous videos. I actually went as far as student teaching, and I basically had a complete mental breakdown and realized that I just, as much as I loved kids and still love kids, being a public school teacher was not something that I had the stamina for. So I had kind of a major crisis about that, because I actually quit halfway through student teaching, which was the right decision. I know it was a God thing, that I really don't think that I was meant to be a public school teacher. I just don't think that I have the right personality for it, and that needed to happen. I was a philosophy major but an education minor, so I felt like, you know, a lot of this education that I had got had not necessarily gone to waste, because I feel like there are so many aspects of my life where my education has been crucial. But nonetheless, I had been going on this educational trajectory. I was moving towards being a school teacher, and all of a sudden that didn't happen. And I was like, what the heck am I doing with my life? And basically had a little quarter life crisis, and I moved back home with my parents. Yeah, so like, that was kind of like the very worst that my anxiety had ever been. You know, during the really worst, darkest time of my life with the anxiety and everything, that was like the darkest time of my life. And I didn't at the time seek help for it. And thinking back on it, I really should have, because it so affected my functioning. It was to the point where I was like unable to show up to things. I was constantly feeling sick and just like unable to like do a lot of things because I was just feeling so anxious and sick all the time. And that was actually about the time that my food allergies and my IBS symptoms started cropping up. So I take that back. When I moved back with my parents, I did actually see a counselor for a little while, and that actually was helpful. So I didn't do absolutely nothing. That was actually helpful. I really feel like I strayed from God during that time. And when I came back home, I really felt God calling me back. And I really started listening to God again at that point, and huge positive changes started happening when I did that. After a lot of prayer and soul searching, I decided that I wanted to become a massage therapist. I really enjoy working with my hands. I'm very kinesthetic, and I really liked the idea of helping people heal. You know, Jesus healed with his hands, and I feel like this is something that us humans can do, is healing with our hands, you know. There's a lot of power in massage and body work, and I have personally experienced that. I had experienced that. So in that time, I decided that I wanted to go to massage school, and I did. I got a job as a nanny, like full-time job. I lived with my parents, and I saved money so I could pay for about half the tuition when I started massage school. And then I actually had another nanny job, and during that time I was working part-time and going to night school and paying my way through the other half of my massage tuition. So things were going really well. Right before I started massage school, I met Bill. If you guys don't know, Bill is my husband. We actually met on eHarmony. I think I told that story in one of my Q&A videos. I'll try and find that and link that video here. But yeah, we're an eHarmony couple. And so here things were starting to go really well in my life. Things were improving, circumstances were really good. I was really looking forward to the career path that I was on. Like, I was all on board with it. I loved it. I was doing really well at it, and I just enjoyed it. It felt like a God thing. Bill came into my life. That was a God thing. I was like happy, mad, in love with him, and things were just going great, and the anxiety just really subsided during that time. I mean, it would still come up with normal anxiety producing situations, but for the most part it really got a lot better. And then, long story short, you know, we got married, and you know, we did have our infertility struggle, but while I did have some depression during that time, my anxiety wasn't debilitating at that time. I just felt like Bill and I were in that together, and we were very sad and even depressed, but I wasn't experiencing anxiety too much at that time. And if you guys haven't seen my whole food journey video, I'll link that here, with our whole infertility journey and then having our son. And once we started introducing him to solids, that's when we changed our diet. And so that basically covers the last 10 years of my life. Bill and I have been together for 8 going on 9 years now. Oh my gosh, that's insane. So, you know, the last 10 years of my life have been going really well. You know, I've mentioned in some of my weight loss videos that some of my food allergies have been kind of cropping up again. There is a stress to motherhood that has been building in me for a little while. I've been a mom for 3.5 years, and it definitely is a stressful job at times, the most rewarding job of my life. I do not want it any other way. My life is exactly how I want it to be. But with motherhood comes a fair amount of stress, even with one kid, and then with 2 kids, multiple kids in general. I mean, there are definitely times when it is anxiety producing. So in the last, 3 years or so, I have started experiencing anxiety a little bit more again, just with the stress of motherhood and everything and the demands of motherhood, especially since my husband works really long hours a lot of the time. Thank God for my mom and my mother-in-law, because I would not survive that with the kids otherwise. But, the stress of motherhood honestly has contributed to anxiety kind of creeping back into my life a little bit. Then this last month has really brought my anxiety to a head again. A few weeks ago, we lost one of our very dear friends. Very unexpectedly, we found out that he had heart failure, and he was in his 40s, and apparently he did have some health issues that we didn't know about. And even his wife didn't know that they were that bad. I don't think even he knew they were that bad. Dealing with that has really been a struggle. I really feel like that just was jarring and shocking and really makes you examine your life and realize, oh my God, like we do not have control. We just don't have control. And we never know when our last day is going to be. I talked all about that in that video. And there's just like the sadness and the pain and the grief that comes from losing somebody that you care about. This last month, I completely lost my appetite. The last month, I have been eating I've been eating, but it's been very little compared to what I used to eat. And the week or two after that, there was the election here in the United States. I think that no matter where you stood politically on that, it was a stressful election for everyone involved. And just being, in a state of grief, I have really just been feeling like depressed about the state of the world. A few weeks ago, I really was in like a deep depression, and I don't remember feeling like legitimate depression like that in a very long time. Like since I was going through my like quarter life crisis, I was experiencing depression then. You just feel like your body is heavy, your mind is heavy, things just feel heavy and dark, and it's like especially one night was particularly bad. Like I was just having a hard time even getting out of bed that morning, and I was just on the couch all day. I couldn't get myself up because I felt so heavy. That's definitely unusual for me. The best way you can describe it is like the weight of the world. It's like when you're feeling all of the horrible things happening in the world, and it's like you're taking it on your shoulders, and it's crushing. And that's what it feels like. There was one night when it was just so bad, and Bill had never seen me that bad before, and he prayed with me and reminded me of the verse in the Bible that God says, "My burden is light," reminding us that God is the one that handles the weight of the world and that we don't have to. And that prayer really lifted that for me. It really did lift me out of that deep depression. Thankfully that only lasted a few days, so thank God for that, literally. But I was still experiencing the anxiety after that, even though I was out of the like really bad depression.